I'm really interested to hear more about what you witnessed while you were in Jordan in terms of the 12 days of war and kind of your impression of the kind of capabilities that Iran had, and you know the bruising that Israel took.
Yeah. I mean, it was extraordinary. By coincidence, I was in Jordan last October when Iran launched True Promise 2, and that set up the expectations for what we would see this time. And in True Promise 2, that operation was carried out in the course of a couple of hours, where Iran fired something like 200 ballistic missiles uh, at Israel, and
Yeah.
I saw them, and it was like a river of missiles, like shooting stars going across the sky, and interceptors going up. So this time around, we'd been led to believe, or I don't know whether formally or informally, but that if Israel attacked Iran again, that they would launch 1,000 missiles at
Yeah.
once, or some just massive, spectacular operation. And what I think surprised everyone is that Iran didn't do that. On the first night, they launched about 100 missiles, which was pretty impressive when you see them going across the sky. But they didn't launch them all at once. They went in batches of a couple of dozen here, a few there. And that's what they did over the next 12 days. And the first night or two, there was sort of a pattern where the missiles went up at night when you could see them very clearly. But then they started to go at all times of day. And the air raid sirens in Jordan would sound early in the morning or in the afternoon. And you would see the Iranians, you could see all this with the naked eye. They would be using different tactics in the sense that on some days they would launch just a few missiles towards whether it was in the direction of Haifa or Tel Aviv, and other times they would launch these pretty big volleys of 20 or 30 missiles. And it seems that they were deliberately being unpredictable. And as I mentioned earlier, you could see in the beginning the large number of interceptors going up. And uh, some of them, I think, were the American, the THAAD missiles that sort of very high altitude, exo-atmospheric. When they burst, they sort of look like jellyfish in
Mm.
the sky. I mean, that's the best way I can describe them. Whereas when the lower altitude, I think the Israeli interceptors went up, you'd actually see a puff of white smoke when they exploded. And it was very clear to me that they were not hitting. I mean, there probably were some interceptions, but many times you would see the missile just go by the interceptors, and the interceptors are programmed to explode whether or not they hit something, so that the whole missile doesn't come down to earth. They self-destruct. So it was really incredible and remarkable. And uh, the social aspect of this was really important. Just check in um, whether if we have an update from John.
He's just starting his
He's still
computer.
okay. All
So
right.
yeah.
So I'll just keep talking. Just
Good,
butt in
great.
when you when we have John.
You're on a
Um,
roll.
the social aspect of this was that everyone was watching. People wanted to see this, and the air raid sirens in Jordan were supposed to tell people to go and take cover, but I think mostly they were a signal for people to go out and look. And you would, especially in the evening when people are out on their verandas or on their roofs or on their balconies anyway, you know, to have a bit of a break from the heat, uh, you would hear people uh, cheering or saying Allahu Akbar, or the sight of the missiles going to, and knowing that they were hitting, you could hear them hitting. I
Mm.
mean, you could hear the sort of the distant sort of lighter thuds from the interceptors, but there were sometimes these earth-shaking booms, and we're talking about a distance of 150 kilometers away. If you're in Amman in Jordan, you're talking about these missiles hitting the ground 150 missiles away, kilometers away, and you're hearing this loud boom. And sometimes there was at least one occasion where I felt the ground vibrate,
Wow.
which just gives you a sense of the power of these Iranian warheads. It was really like nothing I'd seen before. And
Yeah.
to be able to watch it in real time was just incredible.
And there was also, I mean, just the significance, and Helena mentioned this of Iran hitting major like scientific military intelligence command and control centers like the Weizmann Institute, various air bases. I mean, what do you think the kind of intelligence impact was by hitting those strategic targets?
Well, it's important to say that officially we don't know what strategic targets
Yeah,
were hit, that none of that's been admitted. But we were able to, I wrote an article about how the Iranians clearly hit, even though this wasn't reported as such in the Israeli and the foreign media because of the censorship. You could tell from the images and the videos that they clearly hit this major Israeli army cyber warfare base in Beersheba in the south,
yeah,
and it's this huge base that they've invested billions and billions in, and wasn't even completed. And what they've done is they have integrated this Israeli army military and cyber command base with all these tech firms that we've talked about before, like Microsoft and Intel and others. We talked about a few weeks ago with the Microsoft current and former workers, the role of Microsoft in that genocide through the services they provide to the Israeli military. Well, Microsoft actually has its offices
yeah,
in that military base in Beersheba. And we learned that because uh, of the video coming out and the explosions near the Microsoft office. I don't think they actually hit the Microsoft building directly, but they hit other facilities near it that were part of this base. I also learned a lot by looking at Google Maps. You can tell, it's interesting because you have Google Street View, and you can actually, it's hard to describe this, but you can actually see all the streets in a country that are covered by Google Street View. But what's interesting is in Israel, the Google Street View is suppressed in strategic areas. So that's supposed to hide them, but it actually tells you where they are, because when
yeah,
you see this sort of hole in the Google Street View coverage, you can tell you're looking at a sensitive site. And there I could see some of the sites that appeared to have been hit, or at least from the videos and pictures that I was able to see, they clearly targeted the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 area, which is an area north of Tel Aviv where there's a lot of intelligence bases. And they hit the refinery in Haifa, which is significant because they knocked that out of action completely. I think it's still shut down. It may be shut down for months. The Haifa port, Israel only has three ports that are capable of handling large-scale container vessels. Eilat, which has been shut down now for some time, basically by Ansar Allah in Yemen, the Eilat port is not functioning. But then on the Mediterranean, you have Haifa and Ashdod, and both of those appear
yeah,
to have been targeted, and both were shut down. And even if they could have continued to officially receive ships, or technically to receive ships, what we saw is international shipping companies, including Maersk, and we've talked about the role Maersk played in bringing weapons to
yeah,
Israel. Musk said, we're not going to sail into Haifa anymore. So
yeah,
look at that. Israel was, and of course, Ben Gurion Airport was shut down completely, and Ramon Airport in the south was shut down completely. So over these 12 days, Israel was completely cut off from the world by air, by sea, not quite by land, because lots of Israelis were trying to get out of the country and left through Egypt and Jordan. But for goods coming in, they were cut off. So this is why Israel could not sustain a war of attrition. Israel really depended on striking a knockout blow against Iran in the first day or two, where they thought that the shock and awe would cause the leadership to topple and the Iranian people to rise up. But the moment that did not happen, then Israel was stuck in a war of attrition where it could not fight, and it had to uh, basically cry uncle, and
Yeah,
that's what happened.
that's right.